Yeah. Hello, can you hear us?
Testing, testing. We'll give it a second. Oh, yes, people can
Woo!
hear you now.
Yay!
Yay! Amazing.
Perfect. Okay, I'm
Okay,
gonna turn
we'll
on
leave
camera
you
as
to
well.
it.
Thank you so much. Mary's working behind the scenes to make this amazing. Wait, camera, can you see me? If I don't just want to talk, I want you to be able to hear me, like see me as well. Though we can't see. Okay, now we can. Lahaj! Woo! Okay, so I'm assuming you can see me if you say Blahaj. Is that correct? Are we good? Yes? Oh my gosh. It sounds good. Okay, we're going to go back. We're starting over. I spoke to nobody for a grand total of like 5 minutes. But I love it. Thanks so much for your patience, everyone. I really appreciate it. This is my very first time going on stream, and obviously, we don't want challenges to happen, but they do. That's totally chill. We can roll with it. Okay. Awesome. So, yes, hello, Loxley. I'm your only person for the next 50 minutes. And we're going to be talking on about building your LinkedIn brand. Woo! Let's go. So, first of all, let's learn a little bit about who are you going to be listening to for the next 50 minutes of your life. And that's me. So, my name is Loxley Kolakowski. You can follow me on Twitter. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I am the Tech Together program manager at Major League Hacking. And basically, what that means is Major League Hacking acquired Tech Together, which runs gender focused hackathons throughout the United States. And this year, we're actually expanding to England. So I get to oversee that entire program. I get to work with the chapter directors in all of our chapters. And hopefully, in the future, I'll be able to set the strategy for where we see gender focused hackathons going in the future. So basically, defining who the future hacker is when it comes to making it a more inclusive and diverse space for everyone. Outside of being the Tech Together program manager at Major League Hacking, I am also earning my Master of Science in Information Management at the University of Washington. I am a Seattle native. I like rain. I love Starbucks, and I'm also a huge UW fan. So if there's any Huskies in the crowd, go Huskies. And also in like the Seattle vein, I'm also a hiker and mountain climber in like the Pacific Northwest. Probably the most famous thing you've heard of that I've climbed is Mount St. Helens, which is the volcano that erupted like I think it was in the 80s. It's now you can climb up it very safely. It's a ton of fun. And I'm actually right now training to through hike the Grand Canyon about a year from now. So that'll be 24 miles in a single day. I'm a little scared, but I also think I can do it. And finally, last but not least, we're going prepare you for this presentation. I'm a fan of raccoons. You'll be seeing raccoon gifs throughout this presentation, so be prepared in advance. Awesome. Cool. I see one question. Do you prefer dark milk or white chocolate? I prefer dark chocolate. I'm terrified of raccoons, especially when camping. They sneak up and steal my food. Now, I have the opposite problem. I don't think I see raccoons enough in my day to day life. So I want to go out specifically seeking raccoons. So if you know good raccoon spots, I'm currently in New York City. Definitely let me know because I just don't see enough live raccoons in my day to day life, which I find very sad. But okay, let's get into the actual part of this presentation. We're talking about LinkedIn personal brand. And now that I have all of your attention, this is where I paused last time and realized nobody could hear me. Let's do an icebreaker. So, what is your most interesting slash coolest hobby? And like, this is such a hard question to just like throw at like a room of people or like a Twitch stream of people. But it's also, I promise you, if you tell me this, it'll be used later on in the workshop to make your LinkedIn profile even better. So, oh yeah, let's go for it. Favorite hobby fellowship. Answering fellowship questions. I love it. That's amazing. Traveling, also awesome. I used to throw knives and crochet. I love how those are like two like polar opposite hobbies. Like one's like seems super intense and the other one's like crocheting is like super wholesome, so I love the mixture of that. 3D artwork and piano, oh my gosh, that is so cool. I know my sister does some 3D artwork, so that's just absolutely amazing. Making cookies, what type of cookies do you like to make? Oh my gosh, like that just sounds amazing. Listening to music, also awesome. learning about space, watching stars. I learn something new each week. Oh, that's so sweet. I train in Krav Maga. Guys, you are all so cool. I'm with the coolest people watching ever. And talking to Blahaj, also, that, you know what, that could be my coolest hobby as well, because Blahaj is my new, like, favorite person slash shark in the entire world. Okay, but awesome. Thanks so much for sharing all of your interesting and super cool hobbies. You guys are absolutely amazing. Now, let's dive into what is a personal brand? Why is it important to spend time, invest the time to develop a personal brand? And that's really because, and this is a quote from the ex CEO, founder of Amazon, is that a personal brand is what people say about you when you leave the room. And I just find this quote personally impactful because it's really about when people think about you, what do they want, what do you want them to think about? Like, do they want to go like, oh, Loxley's a person who runs a gender-focused hackathons and she likes raccoons. Like, that's the vibe that I'm going for. So every single person has a different vibe that is kind of helps you be remembered, and also is the impression you leave with your coworkers, with your friends, with everyone that you interact with. So I think personal brand is so important. Okay, let's dive on. And then next up is advice before we begin. Like, the first thing is that I would challenge you to have your LinkedIn profile up right now. Minimize your screen, put the stream on one side, put your LinkedIn profile on the other. Doing that will make sure that you actually make these changes right now, because if you don't make them right now, chances are you probably won't make them in the future. So take this time right now and also have your LinkedIn open. And then also the advice, I remember my very first manager I had during my first internship. One thing he said to me is like, I'm going to give you a ton of advice and you don't have to take any of it. Like, you can literally take what means the most and is the most impactful to you. So some advice might really hit home for you in this presentation, and others might go, you know what, like, this is an okay idea, but I'm really like, I like what I have right now in my profile, and like, that is perfectly fine. Here, I'm just here to provide the advice that I can, that I've learned from experts in the industry. Some of it I think is awesome. Others I'm like, oh, the experts say this, but I've got my own personal best practice. So really, it's completely up to you. Oh, yes, and you're dropping your LinkedIn's already. You guys are so ahead of the game. That's what I was going to do in like 20 slides from now, but that's awesome. Go connect with everyone right away. Okay, first off, we're going into the very first thing you can do to make your LinkedIn profile better, and that is customizing your URL. When you first create a LinkedIn profile, it's very common for it to just have like this, it has like your username, like Loxley Kolakowski, but it just has a bunch of random numbers at the end, or random numbers and letters. And one thing you can do to immediately get your LinkedIn profile to stand out is to customize it. How do you customize your LinkedIn profile? So basically what you can do, I'll pull up my LinkedIn profile really quick, is you can go edit profile and URL. We'll click that. And then you click this little, it's super zoomed in, so I'm going to zoom in for you. Is you click this handy dandy little like pencil icon, and then you can edit it. There's a ton of different ways that you can do it. Like a couple of years ago, I had Loxley Kolakowski on my LinkedIn profile, but then I realized like on every other social media I have, I use Loxley LK. That's like the link to my website. So that's what I just ended up switching my LinkedIn to it as well. So highly recommend doing that thing. So when someone's like typing in a LinkedIn URL, yours is just super easy to come up. It's super easy to remember. And if you end up doing super cool streams like this one day, you can just drop the link in and it looks super professional. Awesome. Dope. What's our next piece of advice here? Let's go on to the next one. And now profile picture. And this is one that it's like you can do right now, but it's a little time consuming to get a profile picture that you really want to have on your LinkedIn profile. So the advice here is to make sure your profile, first of all, it reflects the industry you want to enter. And here I have images of a bunch of role models in like the tech industry who are all CEOs. When I first created this workshop like 2 years ago, I realized I had this thing, I was creating it for like a women in informatics, like a women focused club. And basically what happened is I had a bunch and they were all like male CEOs. And I was like, what's the message I'm trying to share here? It's not, I'm obviously not succeeding. So I went back and I typed in like female CEOs, and now I have this much better, way more diverse list of like role models in the tech industry. And really the first thing we want to call out here is make sure your photo reflects the industry you want to enter. And we can see here like a different realm of like more professional to slightly more casual profile photos. The big thing to keep in mind here is like, let's say you want to go into like the finance or business industry, you're probably going to want to look slightly more professional in your profile photo than if you were like entering the tech industry. And that's just really gauging the industry you want to enter and making sure your photo matches that industry. Another thing that you're going to want to avoid is a cropped photo. Let's say you have a really awesome picture of yourself, but unfortunately that photo is a group photo with other people. You kind of want to avoid having like their shoulders or part of their face or hair in the picture with you. So those are the main pieces of advice. Even I actually have to update my LinkedIn profile photo. It's a couple years out of date, but I've got one. It's good. It's a little out of date. I've got to take another photo, but it's I like it. It's meets all of the requirements of going for not too professional in the tech space, but also something that if I had like, the company I want to work for, such as MLH, looking at my profile, I'd be very happy with what they see. Awesome. Next up is, so we've talked about profile photo, and then we're going to talk about cover photo. And that's the thing behind your LinkedIn profile, this huge, massive banner. And once again, I've got a bunch of really awesome female CEOs who are all leaders in their industry, and we have these are their customized backgrounds. So we can see on our last slide, like only like 1 out of 4 of these had a custom URL. Granted, if you're the CEO of YouTube, you probably don't need a customized banner, but if you are CEO of an awesome company, they can do a really great job of representing the image you want to portray to the people you most want to look at your LinkedIn profile. So like examples here, first of all, founder and CEO of Girls Who Code, Reshma Saujani. She also is a best-selling author. So she put her own book that she wrote onto the back of her profile. That's just super awesome in my opinion. Also, Pamela Maynard, she's the CEO of Avanade. Avanade, their big thing about their personal brand is that they love the color orange. Everything they have is orange with this like fancy little wave on it. So she has a boat with an orange flag with this awesome orange red wave in the front. It really is an amazing customized background cover photo. Mary Barra, she's the CEO with General Motors, and she has this awesome photo with like some high-tech cars in the background of hers. An amazing message that she's trying to show in just a picture. And then finally, Julie Sweet, the Chief Executive Officer at Accenture. I think this is the photo taken during the pandemic. So like together, carrot logo ever is just an amazing profile. But what if you're not the CEO of a Fortune 500 company or of a major nonprofit, what should you do for your LinkedIn profile? And my recommendation, there's a lot of different things you could do. The first one you can do is do one for your school. Like, so a couple years ago, my LinkedIn profile photo was with Blahaj in the background. Yes, if I would love to see someone with a Blahaj, you know what? I'll add a Blahaj to my own in one of these little boxes because that would be super cute. But so the first off is you're going to want to do something customized. So the first thing you could do is like your school. Like back a couple years ago, I had the University of Washington. They have a beautiful area in their campus with cherry blossom trees. I had that as my background photo. You could also do one for like maybe the city where you came from. So in Seattle, you might do a photo of the Space Needle. I also know one person who was born and raised in Hawaii. So he had like a super cool, like mountainous, like Hawaiian mountains on his photo. So you can be very creative with this. Another super cool one is, let's say you've like given a talk in front of like a room full of people. You can do a photo of that. That looks super awesome. And this one, I just like got a collage of a lot of my favorite pictures that show both like personal aspects of my life, such as climbing Mount St. Helens, super blurry, and also giving talks, graduating, all of the things that I think are super important to me. Yeah, awesome. Now let's go back to cover photo, and we'll move on to now we've spoken about the kind of the visual aspects of your LinkedIn profile. The next step is your name. Why are we devoting an entire slide to just what your name should be? And that's because, first of all, you want your name to be how you introduce yourself. So, for example, if I went by like Locks instead of Loxley, I would have that on my LinkedIn profile. And the main reason for doing that is like when people see your name and they reach out to you, even for the first time, they immediately know how to refer to you. So even though it might be, yeah, like definitely having LinkedIn, your nickname or what you want to be introduced as on your LinkedIn profile is a really great move. Also, another thing I say LinkedIn is rolling out, they've had this for a while now, is that you can add in your the how to pronounce your name to your LinkedIn profile, which is also super cool. Another thing, so now titled like your name, that's pretty basic. Headline is where it gets more complex and where you have a lot of potential here to make your LinkedIn profile stand out. And the very first thing you're going to want to do is avoid cookie cutter titles. What do I mean by this? So, right now, what you want to avoid is something that it's very likely 100, 1,000 other people also have on their LinkedIn profile. So my like favorite example is like computer science student at the University of Washington. Something like that. There's a very good chance that there's another 1,000 students that have that identical title on their LinkedIn profile. What do you want to do to you want to do something to set it apart from the crowd? And the first thing to consider is like search engine optimization. What is the field that you wish to enter? If you want to be a software engineer, then even if you're a student right now with only like 1 to 2 years of coding experience, putting software engineer on your resume or on your LinkedIn profile is a perfectly acceptable move here. And so making sure you are picking words that are very much aligned with if a recruiter was looking for pieces on your LinkedIn, you're like, hey, we're looking for a software engineering intern. By simply putting the word software engineer into your profile, you're already closer to the goal that you're trying to go for than if you just had like student at X school. Noodles enthusiast on mine. I think that's awesome. I think that some people are extremely creative with their LinkedIn profile. Another one thing that some people do is to put like 3 different aspects on it. Like first of all, what you're an expert in, your passion, and then your job title. So for me, like right now, my LinkedIn profile does not follow this. So once again, like this is like the advice I gave you. I don't actually follow it. Let's see if I can pull up my LinkedIn again. I do tech together, program manager at Major League Hacking, and then master's candidate at UW iSchool. I would also, if I was doing like what am I passionate about, I like doing stuff like this, so like public speaking. So I'd probably put public speaker on my LinkedIn profile as well. Another thing that I'm seeing more people doing in the industry is instead of doing like your actual title, they say like, I am working in X space to do Y, which I think is also very cool. Awesome. Let's move on. Cool. And so, final consideration. So, we're reaching kind of the end of part 1 of this building your personal brand on LinkedIn. And that is this like top section that includes your profile picture, your background picture, your title, your name. The final thing you want to consider is make sure your school and work is accurate. And so, like, what do I mean by this? So, like, right now, it's like mostly just keeping it up to date. And let's say you've got 2 different, like, maybe you're doing like a internship right now while also having like a club experience. Make sure that the one that you want like recruiters and your network to see on your like LinkedIn is the one that appears in the top here. Another thing is like school. So right now, when I was an undergrad student at the University of Washington, I just put University of Washington onto my profile because that's a much wider range of people. But now that I'm in this master's degree, slightly more specialized, I want to be more directly connected to other people in the information school. I've changed it to be the University of Washington Information School. You can also link your personal website, which is pretty awesome. And then the final thing that is super important here, and I'll actually pull in up my LinkedIn again, is your location. And I really can't harp on this enough. Your location is so important when recruiters, and is slightly less important now than it was like a couple years ago when like a ton of opportunities, like now we have more virtual work available to us. But right now, the city is very important. Like when I first created my LinkedIn, it auto generated my city as being like Bothell, which is like a smaller town that's like 30 minutes north of Seattle, Washington. And obviously, there are way fewer job opportunities in Bothell than there are in the greater Seattle area. So if you're looking at a city, probably avoid doing your hometown. Make it the city that you're either working in or going to school in, or the city you're from that you'd like to come back to if you want to work there. So just being very cognizant of where exactly do you want recruiters searching for you. If you do just a tiny little city, less recruiters are going to be looking in that area. If you do the greater Seattle area or the greater Bay Area in San Francisco, those things will reach a wider range of opportunities that recruiters are looking for. Okay, final considerations done there. Let's dive into the about section. Literally, one of the hardest pieces to write on a LinkedIn profile because it's just so painful to have to think about yourself and write a summary about yourself. But I promise it's a very good thing to reflect on. And it's super like once you get it down, you don't have to change it that often, which is very nice. So, what is a good structure for the about section? And there's kind of like here are some bullet points to just follow. The first is what do you do? This is your actual job. It's probably one of the easiest ones. Like I graduated from the University of Washington with my Bachelor of Science in Informatics and now work at Major League Hacking as the Tech Together program manager. Or I am a student at the University of Washington studying informatics with a focus in program management. Stuff like that, probably the most straightforward. The second is what gives you the business to do it, or if maybe you're currently a freshman or sophomore in college and you're like, I'm still learning what gives me the business to do it. You can also do what do you like about it. And like for me, I love my work because it aligns with my three passions. That's a framework you can use. And the final is who are you outside of work? And this will likely be one of the easiest paragraphs to write. And that's because once we did it at the very beginning, you could do what was like what was something that was super unique about you, what was something you're passionate about. That's a great thing to put in here. Why is it important to cover who are you outside of work in the about section? And that's because when people look at your LinkedIn profile, they'll see your job, they'll see why you're passionate about your job, but chances are they'll be able to connect with maybe something in this section. So for example, every year around the fall time, I change my about profile from I like drinking a chai latte at Starbucks to I like drinking a pumpkin spice latte from Starbucks. And something like that, that uniqueness makes it so that if someone else looks at my profile and they go, oh my gosh, I also love pumpkin spice lattes at Starbucks, they're able to put that in. And then when they connect with me, they have something that makes the connection like super more connected. That seems like the wrong way to put it, but yes. And now I've gone through my another way to do your about section if you don't like this template is you can also do like where were you? Like what did you do in the past? What are you doing in the present and what are you going to be doing in the future? Like I was a student at the University of Washington. I am currently the Tech Together program manager at Major League Hacking. In the future, I'd like to continue doing work to support women and gender marginalized people in the tech space. So stuff like that is another way to do it. If it's about section, it seems like something that doesn't really fit you. I see one thing in the thing that says, should we all connect with each other? Absolutely. Go and connect. It'll be a ton of fun. Once I am done with my stream, I'm going to go connect with y'all all as well. So, absolutely, go and connect. It'll be a blast. And now let's practice. I am going to, once again, I'm going to be savage here, and I'm going to say, do it right now. I won't give you a lot of time though, because we still have like 20 minutes and I have about 20 minutes more of content to cover. But I'd love if you all spent just like 1 or 2 minutes at least beginning to write it out. Well, I remember when I first did a workshop like this, I wrote up maybe the final paragraph and I had to come back later to finish this first and second part. And I remember it taking me like a month after the workshop to finally sit down, find time to do it. So I'll just give you a couple seconds. If you'd like to share what you wrote in the chat, even if it's only for this very final bullet point for who are you outside of work, that would be awesome. Imaginary student in Hogwarts on my profile? Of course you can. If you think that's what recruiters want to see, absolutely. Why not? Put that. Is that even an option in education? That'd be super cool. Awesome. I think I will move on now. I really hope. Let me know if you have any questions. Oh, I really appreciate you liking the raccoon. Even the theme behind this raccoon is I'm a raccoon and I'm begging you to do this section, although it's a lot of work. So I appreciate you taking the time to, first of all, compliment the raccoon, and secondly, to actually write up this section for your LinkedIn profile. Okay, next up, the skills section. And this section is a ton of fun. LinkedIn, when I first created this presentation, LinkedIn let you put 50 skills on your profile. And maybe the first challenge about LinkedIn skills is that LinkedIn likes seeing hard skills. When a recruiter is starting to has like 1,000 different profiles to look through, they're going to type in like, hey, I'm recruiting for a front end engineer. This front end engineer, I want them to know GitHub, React, and maybe a couple other skills. So they're first of all going to be looking for hard skills on your profile. So if you're not using the skills section, it is super, super valuable. If I can pop up my skills section, I have every single one of my 50 skills is filled out. I'll scroll down a little farther. Awesome skills. Show all 43 skills. You mean I don't have the whole 50? Oh, that's absurd. So and then you could put your top 3 skills. I put C sharp. I did a bunch of C sharp in college, but also me not following my very own advice is I knew that like although I liked coding, I'm more like doing this program management type of stuff. So I put leadership and public speaking as my other top 2 skills. And it's completely up to you what you do for your skills. But that's something, make sure you take the time and fill those out. Basically, the number of skills you have and the endorsements you have related to that skill is how a recruiter will decide. Like, let's say I'm looking at 1,000 different people who I'm looking to recruit a front end engineer. I'm looking at 1,000 different things. I'll type in React. If React shows up as a skill, perfect, they pop up. And then it'll be ranked by the number of endorsements you have. And now here we are. Endorsements, yes, endorsements are incredibly important. And then y'all are already so ahead of the game. You've been dropping your LinkedIn profile into the chat. So not only do I want you to connect with each other, I want you to endorse each other's skills. This is a super valuable thing you can do. Professional pizza eater. That's also an amazing skill. Oh yeah, like you are a raccoon and you can also like do or pedal on a mini bike. That is a skill. That's amazing. Okay, let's move on past the skill section. Okay, we've reached about the 50% point of our presentation, which is concerning because we've talked for more than 50% of our time. But now we're on to the second part, which is we've talked about how to refine your LinkedIn profile. But now let's talk about how do I actually reach out to people on LinkedIn? I just went through this entire workshop. I have tons of like my LinkedIn profile looks amazing, but now I actually want to use that profile to expand and grow my network. And this is how you do it. And this is, first of all, words of wisdom here is do not wait until you're applying to jobs to start networking. So let's say like there's this dream job you have and you're like, oh my goodness, I've refined my LinkedIn profile. The job was just posted. And now I was like, I applied, but I'm now going to like spam 10 different people on LinkedIn who work there to see if I can get a referral or see if they have any advice. That is too late. You want to start this networking process 6+ months in advance before this point. And so first of all, how do you find people on LinkedIn? And I'm actually going to walk this through live because I have a bunch of slides, but I can do it in person as well. So let's go to my LinkedIn. So basically how you find people live for a LinkedIn is you go to LinkedIn. Step one, you head over to LinkedIn and then you start searching. So for example, let's say you're looking for a job. And for me, back like 2-3 years ago, I was like, what I really want to do is I want to work with students and help them and encourage them to join the technology field. And the role that I thought was the best fit for that is I typed in the word developer advocate. I actually might change this slightly. I'm going to do community manager because then I can use a specific Major League Hacking example. Community manager. So I type in community manager. I wait for it to roll. I've got a bunch of different community manager roles pop up, but it's like, Stanford University School of Medicine, I don't really want to work in the medical field. I'd like to do something else. So basically, how do we change this? First of all, LinkedIn has this very handy dandy like filtering section. So I'm not really like jobs, people. What we want to do is look for people because we're specifically trying to find someone we want to network it with. So we've got a collection of people who pop up, current company. I'm going to type in Major League Hacking. Amazing. We're going to show results here. Awesome. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. So after looking this up, I basically was able to filter for the exact company I'd like to be filtering for. And then the people who actually are in the office with me right now are people who show up, which is amazing. What is a couple additional things you can do here? So for example, right now, if for me, I'm based in the Seattle area, so my first inclination is to look for someone else at the company who works in the same place as me or potentially went to the same school as me. And that's going to be a slightly more challenging, but also worth your time. So typically what I do is I type this in and then I occasionally go into incognito mode. I start opening these profiles and figure out, like, I'll type in Maria right now just for the fun of it, look at her profile and start to find things that specifically relate to, like, oh, something I'm interested in. For example, oh my goodness, Maria and I both have the Azure Fundamentals certification. So if I were to set up a profile with her, exactly, stalker mode, exactly, totally acceptable on LinkedIn. What I do is I ask to connect with her, be like, hey, Maria, I saw that you work in Major League Hacking. I recently applied for the community manager role here. I saw that you also have your Azure Fundamentals certification. Would you mind like connecting for 30 minutes in the next week to grab a virtual cup of coffee? So let's go back into our presentation so we can see the actual template we're going for here. So finding people, filtering, all filters. How do I find people? Oh, I forgot something. The alumni search tool. Let's say you're specifically looking for someone who works at the company or in a role you want, but you first want to make sure that there's going to be a guaranteed connection with you. And a good way to do that is to go to, if you're currently in college, if you're currently at a boot camp, is to go to that campus, like that website, go to the University of Washington, you can type in alumni, and then you can start filtering for the company they work at, their location, and their job title. A super good way. If someone else, an alumni from your own university, is going to want to support you and make it go, like, is going to want you to be successful. So of course they're going to help you out. Now, sending a connection request. So it's covered in, state the connection you have with them. You went to the same school, you worked at the same company, include something personal to show that you did the research. Hey, Maria, I saw that you did the Azure Fundamentals certification. I also have that. That's super cool. And then a kind connection request. So this is basically avoiding, like, some people get hundreds of connection requests a day. Why specifically should they spend the time to look at your like connection request? And that's specifically saying, like, hey, Maria, I specifically wanted to reach out to you because you work at Major League Hacking in this community manager role, and that sounds like something I'd be super interested in. So instead of just sending out like 100 spam connection requests, to really customize it per person, you'll be spending more time per each connection request, But the plus is you'll probably be getting more responses because of these custom messages. And actually, this one I wrote, I got a response. Hey, Loxley, it's nice to meet you. With you, happy to discuss the role sometime. So, a couple things to keep in mind here. First of all, if they don't respond to your connection request, it can be it can hurt inside. It can hurt your feelings because you spend a lot of time researching them. You probably got excited about potentially connecting with them and having a virtual coffee chat with them, but sometimes they just don't respond. I once remember when I was like looked up someone who I thought had the coolest job in the world and they never replied. And I remember being very sad for a little bit, but don't worry, it's completely fine. Just don't give up. Continue sending out connection requests to people who you're interested in and assume good intentions. Maybe they don't reply and they're just an extremely busy person who gets tons of connection requests. Also, another piece of advice is let's say you're interested in a company or a role. An intern is a very good first connection at a company you're interested in. They'll probably be super open to talking to you about their experience. And finally, don't undervalue yourself. Literally, the worst thing that can happen when connecting with people on LinkedIn is that they never respond. And that is perfectly fine if it happens. Move on. Oh yeah, scheduling a coffee chat. So basically, after you find something in their profile you want to learn more about, and let's say you want to start connecting with them more often, is that you can just basically say like, "Hey, I find your role very interesting. I find the project you're doing super cool." Now, the next thing up is you want to be very specific with what you want about them. Like, "Hey, Loxley, I saw that you work at like Major League Hacking, but you also are a current master's student at the University of Washington. Would you be interested in reviewing my resume because I'm currently applying to the program? Thank you so much." So that's another, like making sure you're very specific with what you want, not asking for too much right out of the gate. Also, on this note, no asking for referrals yet. It's too soon. You want to wait until after you've developed a relationship with them. Maybe you've had a coffee chat with them a couple times, and then you can say like, "Hey, this role just popped up. Would you be open to referring me for the position?" And the final thing that's just a nice professional touch to add is to add an exit clause. So for example, it's like, "Hey, I understand that you're like, I'd love to have 30 minutes of your time for a virtual coffee chat if you're interested. But I also understand that you're probably a very busy person and it's perfectly fine if you're just too busy." And that's just a way to make it so like, hey, if they reply to you and they just don't have the time this week, they'll probably be more likely to reply to you to let you know than just leaving you hanging. Awesome. How do I prepare before a coffee chat? So let's say we've sent connection requests to people, a couple agreed to do a virtual coffee chat. The last thing you want to do is show up to a 30-minute virtual coffee chat and have nothing to say for 30 minutes because not only did you waste your time, you wasted their time. So how can you prepare in advance to make that the most productive conversation ever? And the first is figure out, is this going to be a virtual communication or is it going to be in person? If it's a video chat, definitely make an effort. I think from what I've felt like in the industry, anyone could reach out to me and I'd be open to using any communication tool they had. I'm totally chill with Zoom. I'm totally chill with Microsoft Teams. I've even used BlueJeans before. I'm very chill with anything. But if you can, try to use the video platform they use for work. If they work at Microsoft, chances are they're using Microsoft Teams. So sending them a Microsoft Teams invitation would be a very good, well informed move. Also, if this will be in person, trying to find a place that's relatively close to where they live or their office is a great idea. Finally, make sure you always show up early, even for a virtual video. Sometimes, for example, in this scenario with me joining the stream, we had some technical difficulties, which is perfectly fine. But making sure you show up early so that if those circumstances occur, you're still making sure that you're respecting their time. Or same thing in person. There could be traffic, there could be something wrong on the road. Your car might not start right away. The bus might be late. That's super important. And finally, avoid distractions if you can, making sure to have your phone put away so that you're not checking your phone while meant to be interacting with the person. Conduct research. I feel like this is getting into stalker territory once again, but once again, that is perfectly fine. So, first of all, the research you conduct will vary by person, position, company, and background. And first of all, what you can search for is, especially after they've connected with you, feel free to click on their LinkedIn profile, see if they've done any posts in the past, see if they have a personal website, a Twitter account, if they've done any recent blog posts, publications. All of these things will inform what you can do to prepare for the conversation. There's also just a bunch of different recommendations you can do. And so, for example, one of my favorite things to do in a in a coffee chat is to ask like two questions. Is first of all, what books do you recommend? Both as like professional recommendations so I can like improve myself in my career, but also what are you just currently reading right now that you love that you'd recommend? And my other question that I love to ask is, so I just talked with you. I had a fantastic time in our conversation. Who are some other people on your team or in your network who you think I should reach out to next? And then the advice I recently got about that is don't just ask them for like one contact, ask them for like two or three contacts, because the last thing you want is to ask them for one contact. You message that contact and then they never get back to you. And then you're like, oh man, that was my one shot. So that's a very good thing. And they'll be very open to helping you out with that. There's also just a list of networking questions that I specifically pulled from the Harvard Law School. So literally, a lot of resources online, but making sure that you do all of those pieces. And then finally, so you've had a fantastic connect, like meeting with them, you networked, you had amazing time. What do you do after it? And the first thing is to really just be show gratitude. Say that you really appreciate that they spend time out of their busy workday to work with you, and be specific. What about the conversation was super valuable? And then at this point, you can also decide, like, if you decided, hey, this person was super awesome to me, but I really don't want to do this like that much more, you can you don't have to stay in contact with them. You don't have to reach out and like every 2 weeks to be like, hey, do you want to do another 30-minute chat with me? It's perfectly fine to like step away if you'd like. Also, one thing that this was advice that I was also given by my very first manager is to set up a Google Calendar reminder to follow up with them once every 3 months. Once, like, if you have someone in your network, like for example, I currently have like I have like a list of 10 people that I reach out to every year before like the holidays to be like, hey, happy holidays. Like, here's the update on my life. What are you up to? It's been that's one of my highlights of like the end of the year. And then finally, this idea of social capital. So after you meet with someone the very first time, they're probably not going to be like throwing a referral your way. But if you stay in touch with them, it doesn't have to be a meeting. It could be interacting with them on LinkedIn, liking their posts on Twitter, stuff like that helps build the professional long term relationships. And that's when someone's more likely to be like, hey, I totally want to, like, you're an amazing fit. We'd love to have you on our team, at our company. I'd love to give you a referral. And that's it. That's the end of the presentation. I have one more raccoon gift for you. One thing that I think there's two final pieces. So, like, first of all, this event, I've watched a bunch of experts in the field, and they're the ones who like have given me a bunch of this advice. I didn't just like magic this out of thin air. So, thank you to those people who I've been able to draw insights from. Also, another point I'll make that I forgot to during my talk is one piece of advice is, who do you craft your LinkedIn profile for? And the person you craft it for is like, who is the person you most want to look at your resume? Do you have like this dream team or a dream job? Do some research, figure out like who is leading that team, and then craft your profile around that person and what you'd like them to see. That's one of the best pieces of advice, because you can do your profile in a ton of different ways, but that can help zero down to exactly the audience you're looking for. Awesome. And at that, I will open it up to questions. Anyone have questions about their LinkedIn profile? When should you add a role? Oh, that's a great question. So basically, when to add a role, there's a lot of different ways to do it. And I think some people, like let's say you get an offer, like an internship offer in the fall, a lot of people put just something on their title that says like incoming software engineer intern at X, which is very common. What I typically do is I add a role after I typically add it on day one of actually starting the position, just so that, and then typically like LinkedIn has this great feature where you add the role and then it'll ask you like, hey, do you want to do a post about it? And then like that's just a very smooth time to do it. If you would send me a cookie, Adam, I would probably eat it. Any other questions? I'm here for another 3, 4-ish, 5 minutes. I've already gotten so many connection requests, which is amazing. What is your favorite piece of advice? Oh my gosh. That's such a hard question because there's so much advice out there. That's such a good question. I really honestly, one of the most impactful pieces of advice I got was like from the person who told me like, hey, like you can take you don't have to take everything I tell you. Like don't feel obligated to take I'm gonna give you tons of advice. Take what sticks, what you feel really passionate about, and then you totally I won't judge if you walk away from the pieces that aren't your favorite thing, that just don't resonate with you. So although I'm not sure that's my favorite piece of advice, it has definitely sticked with me the longest. I'm trying to think if there's another piece of advice that really stands out to me. That's a main one that I very much, it just sticks. It's has stuck with me all this time, which is crazy. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, do you know what my piece of advice? Do you put raccoon gifs in a PowerPoint presentation? Yes or no? And the answer is yes. Is it professional enough? Absolutely. So, not applicable to every situation in the world, but for me personally, a huge fan of the raccoon gifs. Any other advice? Any other questions? I'm down for anything. After I'm done with this, I'm going to connect with all of you on LinkedIn. If you have any questions ever about LinkedIn profiles, resume reviews, what do you do if you put too much salt in your cookies? I've got one more. Oh, that's awesome. I really don't make cookies enough, so I very much literally I follow recipes to the T. So I never ever make a cookie with too much salt in it, hands down. What are your thoughts on LinkedIn projects? Let me pop into LinkedIn projects and put it in so we can connect with you. Absolutely. Oxley LK, that's my Twitter. I put that through the MLH thing, but that's all right. So awesome. When you aren't looking for jobs, that's a good question for when you have a ton of recruiters messaging you and you aren't looking for jobs. My recommendation, there's two things you can do. If there's just too many for you to handle, it's totally fine to just ignore them. The recruiters are just sending out hundreds of automated messages, so it's you're not necessarily hurting their feelings if you don't reply. If you want to be slightly more if you're oh, I'm not looking for a role right now, but this is a company or position that I'm interested in, you can always just send hey recruiter,
I'm not looking for roles right now, but like I'd love to have you in my network for the future. Another thing that I've done in the past is if a recruiter messages me and they're like, "Hey, we're looking for like this is actually like real life story here." Someone was like, "Hey, I like I'm currently recruiting for like a software engineering position. I think it was like a quality engineering position at Tesla." And that was not something that I was interested in, but I was like, "Hey, like do you mind if I share this with my network?" And I did. I shared it with like everyone that I like was in my university classes, and actually one of person from my class got an internship at Tesla after I like recommended him to the recruiter. So like if you're like in a great position, you can do an amazing thing by like passing it on to other people, and then like you're making a lot of people happy, and it's all a good time. Yeah, same thing with spammy looking recruiters. Feel free to ignore them. It's perfectly fine. I had the one question about projects, but I'm at the very end of time. Let me see if I can. I think projects are good. I would say don't focus on them as much as like professional experience. I'll thanks so much, Maria, for being my example here. Also, yeah, feature links, projects. I personally do not have projects on my LinkedIn. With that said, they can be valuable. Even like let's you can even put it as experience on your LinkedIn as like, hey, I was a program manager while doing this project, and like that is perfectly acceptable. And that is, I'm at the very end of my time. I'm going over, so I'm going to step off. But I had an absolute blast. I am looking forward to connecting with all of you and following you on Twitter. And have a fantastic rest of your day and Global Hack Week.